Well, good morning, everybody. I'm back here in the woods. I've just spent a really nice night out here in the woods, and it's just nothing beats camping this time of year, right? There are no bugs, and the nights aren't too cold. I've got that nice wood stove in here by Danchel Outdoors. So it's super spacious inside the tent, and I don't have to have the bug screen closed, so it's nice. I can just hang out here by the fire. And since you guys saw the tent last, remember I was installing the silicone boot, and it's working really, really well. Holds the stack nice and firmly and safely through the roof of the tent. So one thing I enjoyed about camping last night was when I woke up this morning, I woke up to the sounds of migrating birds flying over. That's not a migrating bird, but sounds like the woodpeckers are back and in full force, marking off their territories. But yeah, I heard some geese coming in early this morning, so that's nice. Sometimes I've heard swans come through as well, so that's really, really cool. Sometimes it happens in the wee hours of the morning, and sometimes you'll hear them coming in overnight too, so that's really, really exciting. So it got me thinking, you know, about spring and camping and how some of you guys are probably getting ready to plan your camping trips for this year. So I just want to give you some tips and tricks to get ready for the season. So planning, now's the time to plan your trip. Already looks like if you're in Ontario that you know, a lot of the campsites are already snapped up and prices are soaring for backcountry sites. And oh, I just saw the woodpecker go by. Sorry, distraction. That was a huge pileated woodpecker that we heard earlier, and he just flew over top of me. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. So yeah, planning. Make sure that you start and get your reservations early if you're going through any of the provincial or federal park systems, because definitely they are booking up quickly. But I also want to draw your attention to something else. Don't despair if you cannot get a camping spot this year. You can also consider Crown Land camping. And there is a really awesome website in regard to Ontario Crown Land and where you can camp. And this camping is free of charge. So that's awesome. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of acres for you to explore in this beautiful province. And you can also explore it in other provinces as well. And I'm sure there's state land as well that you can camp on if you're on the state side. There's a really good YouTube channel, Pine Martin. He talks a lot about Crown Land camping and does it quite a lot. So if you're really interested, go check out his YouTube page. You also want to plan your gear and get it now. I was at an outfitter the other day, just getting some, some of my spring clothes have been really worn out for camping. So I was just getting a couple things. They're on sale. And I was warned by the merchant that people are buying gear quickly and it's going to disappear really fast. It's going to be a very popular thing to do again this spring and summer due to the current pandemic situation. So you want to make lists of stuff you need and try to get it now before it gets snapped up. Speaking of clothing, really important to make lists of things that you need to wear this time of year, kind of a transitional season. So you want to dress up in layers like I'm doing here. I've got 3 or 4 layers on right now because mornings start off cool and then they gotta get warm throughout the day. And important as much as possible to use sort of natural fabrics like wool and cotton, things that are really breathable. Brief little story here. I don't know if many of you heard. A little boy, 3-year-old boy, went missing in woods not unlike this, in shield country with lots of trees and snags and rocks recently. Just was out of his family's sight for probably about a minute. Ended up wandering off into the deep woods like this for 3 days. 100 police officers and search and rescue were looking for him, helicopters, heat sensing equipment, tracking dogs. They couldn't find him for 3 days, above three days. They couldn't find this little 3-year-old boy. And by sheer miracle, they found him a little after day 3, alive and well. And one of the things that was credited to his survival was appropriate clothing. So he was out with his family and he had pants and boots and a jacket, and he had a wool sweater underneath as one of his layers. And the officer who found him curled up asleep by a beaver pond said the boy was warm to the touch, not shivering, because he had on a wool sweater. And things that you know about wool is that if it gets wet, it's still able to retain your body heat. So what a miracle. So happy they found little 3-year-old Jude after that ordeal. And it just goes to show you that clothing is so important, especially this time of year. Proper clothing to keep you dry, because he was out in minus temperatures, high winds and rain, and he still managed to survive with no food, no water, no nothing for over 3 days, but he had appropriate clothing on. So kudos to his family for setting him up for success in a really, what could have been a really awful situation. And when you're, going out camping or even just on a little day excursion out hiking, just make sure to carry at least the bare minimum. You've got your proper clothing, you've got your layers. I usually carry with me, even just on like a little, I don't know, an afternoon outing or a hike, sort of a bare minimum. I've got a knife, I got a nice ferro rod, a lighter. Typically, sometimes I'll even carry with me, honestly, one of those little survival straws. So it's something that you can drink out of a puddle or dirty water, and what it does is it's like a filter. So you might, if you can't carry a whole lot of water with you might want to carry one of those life straws with you. You can drink out of a lake or a river, just something so that, because you can survive quite a while with just water alone without food. So you may want to have that with you because you don't want to get sick or anything drinking bad water, because that will finish you off pretty fast. So sometimes I'll bring that. I'll also bring a tiny little, I think they're called soul blankets. Basically, they're like a little foil blanket so that if you got lost, you could kind of bundle up with it, or you could kind of make a little lean-to or something like that as well. I also am sure to carry with me a few snacks like Cliff Bars, and I also carry with me those Endurance Tap, maple syrup shots with the ginger in them for energy. They're really cool to have around as well. And of course, I always carry a foraging bag with me, so if I do find something like mushrooms or berries, then I can carry it along with me. Important also to have a whistle, a really loud whistle, so that, if you got lost, or if there's a wild animal around, you can startle them with a whistle. I like the Fox 40 whistle, and I always carry one with me. Often I'll also have with me a compass and or a GPS unit. Probably the GPS is what I have with me most, just because I can also find, my mushrooms and where all my edibles were last year in the spring forest. So really important to have something with you like a map and some way of finding direction in the forest. And when you're off on your camping trips or your day excursions, be sure to tell someone where you're going. That way, if you don't return, also I should say, you should tell them when you're expected to come back. Because, like with the case with that young boy there, time is of the essence. Royce is trying to imitate being a beaver. Time is of the essence. So if you're not back on time, people should know where, a general area they should start looking for you. Because if, it gets cold or rainy or windy, your chance of survival goes down if you're not prepared. So be sure to tell somebody where you're going and when you're coming back. Quite often with a lot of, backcountry sites, like in Algonquin Park, for example, like you have to tell them, where you're going to be and at the certain checkpoints, because they want to make sure you're safe on your camping trip as well. Be sure also to have the right gear with you, for sleeping overnight, like the correctly rated sleeping bag. If you're going to be expecting temperatures of -10, you don't want to have a super thin summer bag with you, or your night's going to be very uncomfortable. So just make sure you've got the right gear with you and that you plan for all the weather conditions. Check the weather before you go, and check for any updates along the way so that you can anticipate some rain, snow, scorching heat, things like that. So you know where to plan. Putting your tent, you don't want to put it in a low area if there's lots of rain. If there's high wind, you want to sort of tuck into the bush. So just be aware of the weather conditions when you're on your trip this spring or summer. If you plan on doing a canoe trip or being on water, please be incredibly safe. Make sure that you have a life jacket. I've heard some awful stories of people not being prepared, getting stuck in high winds on lakes, for example, in Algonquin Park, and ending up in an awful situation and having to be rescued and not surviving. So if you have a life jacket on, at least you have a chance. So just make sure that you're, honing up on your paddling skills, and that you're wearing a life jacket, because you don't want to end up in a rescue situation or something worse. Conditions right now in the forest around me are actually pretty dry. There's a lot of leaf litter and things like that. So be really incredibly careful. Even though we've had some rain and, a little bit of sleet at times, the conditions are pretty dry. So when you're having a fire, and especially there's been high winds recently, be very careful. There's already been some bushfires here in Ontario. Probably people going out having a fun time. But, you could end up in a really bad situation setting a large swath of land on fire. Make sure, if you're camping, I have my little wood stove in there. It's contained. I've got this time I've got a really nice height on the stack there, so that little embers that kind of come off of the logs, they have time to kind of basically go out before they pop out the spark arrestor. And the spark arrestor really does its job of containing sparks and things like that. So make sure to contain your fires, put them out, dead out. Don't leave them smoldering. I see far too many fires, if I come across certain campsites in the woods that are still smoldering, I don't understand why, you know, you have to put those out. We all want to enjoy the forest and not, you know, have to engage a whole bunch of firefighters and a lot of resources, especially during this time of year with the pandemic going on. We're really short on first responders, so be wise when you have a fire. Make sure it's dead out. Well, thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. I hope I've given you some awesome tips and excited you a little bit for spring and summer camping. I'm looking forward to this season, and I've already had a great start with a great first night out in the woods this spring. I hope you guys have a wonderful week and happy planning for your camping trips. If you have any questions, don't forget to leave them down below in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.